Hello, and welcome to my dining room. This is episode 28 of the Live and Learn Knitting Podcast. Today is Friday, October 11th, 2024. My name is Anne, or Annie, and I am coming to you from the banks of the Mississippi River in western Wisconsin. And it's a beautiful Friday here. It's going to be warm outside. It's cool in the house right now. I don't have the furnace on yet. I'm not going to put it on until I absolutely have to. So, good to have sweaters and warm clothes. Yes, and cozy up. Or go outside and be in the sun and warm up. There has been a small amount of living, but really good this week. Good adventures. I had supper with a friend on Monday evening, and that was a nice reunion, catch up, and had two meetups with my tiny town little knitting group. We usually meet on Wednesdays and we sit outside and knit. And I've been taking walks in the evening after supper, and I just noticed how beautiful it's been in the evening, just after dusk, when the sun sets and it turns dark. No bugs, no noise, no chill, really. It's still fairly comfortable. So last night we sat out in the bandstand in the park, and where we usually meet, and we knit in the evening after it was like 7:30 for about an hour. And it was so pleasant to sit there with the crickets chirping, and it was just very relaxing. So if you can get outside and knit before it gets too cold, if it's going to get cold where you are, do that. It's very pleasant. And then after that event last night, I went and drove out of town so I could get away from all the lights, and I sat for several hours and watched the Northern Lights, which really were putting on a show. I can remember, I don't want to be a downer about it, but I can remember about 30 years ago, we had a good spate of Northern Lights activity for many, many days. And we could, I know, see them and see the colors, see the greens at least, with our naked eye. I don't know if it's light pollution or intensity or what, but nowadays you have to either use binoculars or a telescope, or take photos with your camera. The camera can see more than our eye can see. But I did stay out long enough to do two things: see an incredible moon set, which I was not expecting. The moon is half full right now, and it was, up high in the sky, higher when we were knitting, and then it gradually did this. It kind of fell over. And while I was out there in the country, it tipped, because it was pretty much straight up, and it just tipped on its side. And as it got closer to the horizon, as it does, it turned this beautiful orange. It got a bit bigger. And it was just about like this when it set. And it was very moving. That was a bonus for me. I was not expecting to see such a beautiful moon set. I don't know if I've ever watched a moon set before. Something I really need to do more of. I know I've seen moon rises, plenty of them. And I've watched sunsets, sunrises, not very often lately, and I really need to get back to doing that. So yeah, that was special. And then after the moon set, of course, the lights became more active, easier to see for one thing, and they just really picked up in intensity. And mostly it was looking like wispy, with my naked eye, it was looking like wispy clouds, but they did start that shimmering and just waves of them. And it was very special. Yeah, enjoyed it. And I only stayed out till about 12:15, 12:30. I should have tried to stay out all night, but it was a long day because I also had done errands that yesterday, and so I just decided, okay, I've had a good experience. I'll stop now. And yeah. So it was a little late getting up, a little late getting going. It's actually almost it's noon. It's noontime. But that's fine. It's been a nice morning. And you know how they talk about the northern lights kind of can affect you. I mean, it can make people amorous. It can, there was that episode of Northern Exposure where all the foreigners came to, have sex during the northern lights because it was what did it mean? A good birth or good fertility. Anyway, it has kind of lifted me a bit. Let's just say that. So when you can find an experience that lifts you a bit, latch on to that. That's a good thing. So with that, we are going to shift to the topic for today, which, oh boy, are you ready? It's philosophy. Did you expect that? It's the Ikigai philosophy. And there's a reason we're talking about Ikigai philosophy. Here is a schematic I printed out. I will put this on the blog about Ikigai. If you have not heard of it, and like I said, I'll put this on the blog. It's basically the Japanese reason for living or passion of life. What do you do that brings you joy? And a lot of the diagrams that I saw online sort of relate this to a business or a work ethic. I don't think, I'm not sure if that's all the Japanese relate it to, but it's a holistic approach basically. So it's finding what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And if you can get all of those things in harmony, then you've got Ikigai. And why I chose this diagram in particular was because it addressed these 4 little sections where only 3 parts overlap. And so, because here, if your passion and what you're good at overlap, that's great. If 2 things overlap, that's good. If 3 things overlap, one part is still missing. And so it shows that if you have what you love, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for, that's good, but you still have a feeling of uselessness because you're not getting that. Does the world need it? Do you if you love it, the world needs it, and you can get paid for it, but you're not good at it, you have delight, or you have excitement and you're happy, but you have a sense of uncertainty because you're not, you don't have the skill set. And if you have what you're good at, what you're getting paid for, what the world needs, but you don't love it, then you feel a bit empty. And let's see, what was the last one? If you love it, you're good at it, the world needs it, but you're not getting paid for it, you're happy, but there's no wealth. And actually, that's kind of where I'm at, because I don't know, I've never, wealth, making money, making a lot of money, making more money than I need, that's never been high on my list. I have always been very happy, satisfied with having enough to get by, not having a large amount more than that. So I am sort of in my life out of balance here because the wealth thing is not that important to me. And I also don't know, well, when I was working, let's say wealth just meant needs to get by, enough to get by. When I was working, I didn't always have what I loved. I liked parts of my job, and I was good at most of my job. So some days this was there, most days the love part of it really wasn't there. It wasn't, and actually the job had a bit of altruism to it because it was working with wildlife, working with nature. So in that respect, I loved that very much. But when it's a government job and there's bureaucracy involved, that sucks the joy out of a lot of things, doesn't it? So anyway, you can relate this, Ikigai, and that's what I want to talk a bit about today. You can relate that to creating, to making, all of our creative endeavors. Think about it. Do you love it? Are you good at it? Does the world need it? Can you make money from it? Again, that money thing for me, not that important. But, think of all of the other, like a knitting designer. Well, I'll use my, one I usually talk about, Andrea Mowry. She's got all this going on. She loves it. The world. Oh, I wasn't going to use Andrea. I was going to think of, Elizabeth Zimmerman. She definitely had something the world needed with her percentage system and her, her creative, all the new things that she came up with, definitely needed. She loved it. She was good at it. And she made a living off of it. So there, that was a good example of how Ikigai worked for her. But can it work for you? Most likely, maybe not the money part. You don't maybe need it as a job. And I think also, I didn't read an external, I wanted to know about, because they talked about how this gives the Japanese people a sense of, living longer to fulfill a need, and do something that they're good at. And I don't know if that means they work forever. I don't think so. So, in our retirement years, in that, like where I'm at right now, I'm not sure how important the money aspect is, but certainly to do what you're good at, to do what you love, and to provide something that the world needs. Now, I think in our creative realm, that can be, knitting for others, making things for others, gifts, charity, any kind of contributions. So there are aspects we can pull from that and relate to our making activities, for sure. So it's an interesting concept to think about, and something, and then just maybe, making in general, how does that fit in with our life overall? Because certainly there are other things that we can apply this to. Our baking, our cooking, our, feeding our families. Just being in the community. Where's your niche? And is that something that is making you happy? And if it's not, how can you change it? How can you get that all more in balance? And hopefully, if you are still earning an income, needing an income, and we all need an income of something or other, are you doing something that brings you joy? If not, can you shift to that, either abruptly or gradually, however you know. I never shifted, really. I thought about it from time to time and just didn't, you know, I was settled, so I stayed where I was and sort of made other things work to compensate, I guess, for the times when the job was less than enjoyable. So there. And why we are talking about Ikigai and Ikigai philosophy is because this is the Ikigai cowl. And I will show you this up close. It's a very easy, basic cowl. And I'm trying to think if I'm showing it. Yeah, this is right side up for you. So you can get an idea. It's ribbing with an eyelet round. And it's designed by Brianna Lise Miller. On Ravelry, it's for sale for $5 from the Malabrigo Ravelry store. So I'm not sure if she is a designer for them or, you know, sold a design to them, but they are the ones who sell the pattern. I will confess, I did not buy the pattern because I was able to, where I first saw this pattern was on the Frivolous and Frugal YouTube podcast. And that series is no longer being produced. It was two sisters, and why I liked it. One day I was looking for a new series to watch, and so I Googled frugal knitting, and their podcast series came up, and I thought, well, let me take a look at this. And I always have to start at the beginning. I went back to episode 1 and watched it, and I laughed a lot, and I thought, oh my gosh, I could know these ladies could be my neighbors, you know, or in my knitting group, because they were both Midwestern sisters. One lives in Ohio, one lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, so just across the state from me. And they were getting together, you know, like halfway points and doing these episodes. And then when COVID hit, they started doing them via Zoom or, you know, split screen type thing. And it was very interesting. Yeah, they just, it appealed to me. So, you know, a little bit of, one sister was frugal, Penny, and one sister, Dawn, was frivolous. And so, and actually they were a bit of both, you know, they were a bit of both. But it was nice to see kind of two sides to, you know, knitting projects. And basically they did a format of what they'd completed, what they were working on, and then they also did what they learned. There might have been one more piece in there. It's been a while since I've watched an episode, but yeah. So they would also talk about what they learned, and they had a little bit of philosophy or affirmation to it. So that was interesting. And anyway, on one of the episodes, Dawn was making this cowl, and she spoke about it. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. And I have, you know, one. It's a good one for 100-gram skein of yarn, and a special yarn that you maybe purchase somewhere as a memento, or, you know, on a closeout or something like that. So I had a single skein of yarn, and I thought, well, let me make that cowl out of this. And as I said, I did not buy the pattern. I looked at project pages on Ravelry, and I filtered them by useful. You can do that, so you can see who's marked a particular project as useful. And just by reading people's notes and looking at photos, I could kind of see what was going on with those eyelets. And so I basically did my own thing. based on what I was seeing online. And, you know, cast on a certain number of stitches, decided how many rows apart I wanted to have my eyelets, and it took no time at all. It was a really good use for this yarn, and I really enjoyed it. So this lays, it's just a loop, it's not a Mobius. It lays fairly flat. This is not a superwash yarn. This was Mountain Colors Twizzle in the Snapdragon colorway. And Mountain Colors yarn, this yarn is not being produced anymore. I'm not sure Mountain Colors is in business anymore. I didn't check up on that for you today. But yeah, a lovely, you know, multicolored yarn, hand-dyed, I believe. So it does also just stretch out enough to, you know, wrap. This is nice. This is very nice and snuggly, and I can actually pull it down a little bit. But it's not constricting at all. It's very good. The thing about it is, I will post the photo on the blog, which is on my Ravelry page, of me wearing it before it was blocked. And you know, knit to purl to rib is the rib that will pull in the most. You know, it scrunches up really nicely. And it did. And so in that first photo, which was before I washed it and laid it out to dry, it was very scrunchy, you know. So it was close around my neck, and you know, it actually looked like it was just this much, and it rolled over on itself really nice. And once I washed it, that went completely away. And did I mention the fiber content? This is 85% merino, 15% silk. It does not say it's a superwash yarn. So it does just, it's stretched out. And I thought, well, it's stretched out. But luckily I can do this, and I enjoy it that way very much. So that is the Ikigai cowl. And why we're talking about this is my friend Sherry had visited, and Sherry's not a knitter or crocheter or needle fiber artist. She does amazing baking and gardening. She has a fairy garden. She is very much into genealogy and history. And let's see what else. She's done some different things in the past. She's might get into ceramics in her retirement life. But she's a good friend and was a former coworker. And so she had visited an alpaca farm recently, nearby here in Trumpeau County, Justorian alpacas. And so they got to see the alpacas and I think feed them, or, you know, learn about them. And then at the farm, they have a little farm shop with some of the things that they sell. And then also in the winter months, I believe, seasonally, they open a shop in Osseo. I have to stop just for a minute and apologize for George's snoring. George the cat is he's right down there. And I've noticed on past episodes you can hear him snoring, and I've never said anything about it because I didn't know the microphone was picking that up, but he can get kind of loud sometimes for a cat. Anyway, yeah, he's all in half a sunbeam right now, so he's very happy and relaxed. Cats, you know. All right, so she went. So in the farm shop, she bought 2 skeins of this alpaca. It just says alpaca yarn. It says it's a 3-ply bulky. Well, that's interesting, 3 plies. I guess it is 3-ply. It's very loosely spun for an alpaca. I mean, alpaca, doesn't have a lot of elasticity to it to begin with. But this is, so 3-ply bulky, 100 yards, 50 gram. It doesn't have the weight on it, but it says 100 yards. I think I weighed it 50 gram skein, 100%. And this one came from an alpaca named Pretty Girl. So she had 2 skeins of this, and she bought me from the farm shop a pair of commercially made alpaca socks, nice lavender shade, short socks for walking, because we walk together. And I haven't tried them yet. I maybe should have tried them before the weather got cold, but we'll see. I set them aside for good, as we do sometimes with gifts. So she bought these 2 skeins of yarn, and she asked me if I would knit her something. And she was thinking of a hat or mittens. And, if you know anything about alpaca, you know that it does relax. It doesn't necessarily hold a shape very well. And I have in the past knit one hat out of alpaca, 100% alpaca. Similar to this, I think it was maybe more of a sport weight. But I did just a knit 2, purl 2 rib with that hat, and it stayed together. I don't remember if I must have washed it before it was so many years ago. Did I ended up selling it. So, I don't remember if I washed it, but I took it, when I took it to the knitting group, the weaving group, Nadine, who raised those alpacas from that yarn came from, she looked at it and she said, wow, how did you get this? This hat is very, it's got a good shape to it, and it's bouncy, stretchy. And I said, well, it's the ribbing, that ribbing will work for alpaca, I think. Since I sold it, I don't know how well it's held up over the years. It could have stretched out to, I don't know. But I was leery about finding a good hat pattern for her, and I was also leery about mittens, because I was just thinking about how I have mittens made out of wool yarn that sort of sag a bit, with use. And maybe they were part superwash. I'm not sure. Maybe they were a superwash wool. But you just have to be careful of what kind of projects your yarn is going to be suited for. So when I was looking for other projects to talk about in the podcast, I saw this cowl and I thought, oh, that would be good for Sherry's yarn. So I cast on another, let me see if I can get it the right way here, another Ikigai cowl. And this is the Pretty Girl alpaca. And I did the same number of stitches that I used for this one. This, they say Mountain Colors Twizzle is a worsted weight. And this on the label says a bulky. To me, because it's sort of loosely spun, I think it can, it doesn't feel like a bulky. It doesn't read as a bulky to me. So I only went up 1 needle size for it. I think it's turning out very well. Right now it does look sort of scrunched together, as ribbing does. I'm sure it's going to stretch out just as much as this did. And I think the 2 hanks that she bought will probably make this same width. Or, let's see here, how many eyelets do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I've got 2 right now. I've got just this little bit left in the first hank. So maybe 5 rows of eyelets. And I switched up, here you can see I did one close to the edge. And this one, I'll tell you about this. This is the end. I'll tell you about that. That's very close to the edge. So I had 6. If I get 5 out of this, I think it's still going to be the same width because they're just spaced a little differently. So let me talk about what I learned while knitting the Ikigai cowl, because this is the Live and Learn knitting podcast. So the first thing I did was, since it was quite a number of stitches in the round, rather than try and guesstimate, I wanted to use, every inch of this yarn if possible, of my 100 grams. So rather than guesstimate, long tail cast on and put it all on, and I know there are tricks to, winding it around the needle X number of times and taking it off and then calculating that. Another rule of thumb is 4 times, how did that work? If you have 100, it was something about 4 times the length of what you were going to cast on. That was one of the Elizabeth Zimmerman tips. And I would use that from time to time and it would work. Sometimes it didn't. Or sometimes it was too much. It's a guess. So it was, 4 times the amount of length that you needed. So if you were going to do 12 inches, you needed 48 inches of yarn to cast on. I'll have to try that one again and double check that math. But anyway, instead of doing long tail, I did a knitted cast on, and which works very well because you can just start with a short bit of yarn, do a slip stitch, or cast on the 2 stitches like you would to start long tail, and then flip it around and start doing knit, 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 put it on, knit, put it on, knit it on, cast on. Very easy. And I think it's a good one for ribbing because you can stretch it out a bit. If you're relaxed and you get into a rhythm with it, it has a nice springiness to it for the cast on. So I did that. When I got to the end of the number of stitches, I cast on 1 extra stitch, and then you still have to lay everything down and make sure you're not going to twist your stitches before you join in the round. That's still a hazard. So I laid it all down, had that 1 stitch, and then I knit that together with the first stitch, that I had cast on. So that made a nice, let's see if I can find it here. Oh my goodness. Here it is. It makes a nice even edge. You don't have a little blip there where your edge is. So that's a little tip. I just dropped a couple stitches off the needle, but it's not a tragedy. Then did all the knitting, all good, very fast project. Only 100 grams, so I think it was a couple evenings. This is going very fast. And it's a good take-along project because you just need to, count your rows, your rounds, and rib, rib, rib. You've got 1 action round, rib, rib, rib. So very easy. Not, doesn't need too much concentration. At the end, what I wrote in my Ravelry notes, and I remember this now, was how to win at Yarn Chicken. Yes, because I did my bind off in ribbing so that it was stretchy. And then and like I said, I wanted to use every bit of yarn. So I thought, okay, this is it. I've got to cast off in ribbing. And I had 20 stitches short. 20 stitches. So I took out my ribbed cast off, put all the stitches back on the needle, worked just a knit, knit a stitch, pass it over, knit it, pass it over. After about 30 stitches of doing that, I could see, and perhaps I also was unconsciously doing it tighter because I didn't want to, run out of yarn. But it was very inflexible because it does use less yarn, and that was my intent. It uses less yarn, yay! But it was not springy. And think about how an inflexible cast-off would have made this, scrunch up on one end and look goofy. So as much as it's stretched out, and perhaps it wouldn't have been able to go around my head twice nicely with a more inflexible wind off. Yeah. So I thought about it, and I thought, okay, 20 stitches. Now, my cast on number was 180. 20 into 180 is 9. So what I did, went back, cast off in ribbing, but every 9th stitch I worked a decrease. Let's see here. Da-da-da-da. Okay, so this is the cast off edge, and I would be hard pressed to find one of those decrease stitches. That might be one right there, but it worked. It worked, and I ended up with just enough of a tail to weave in the tail end and be done, So 0 leftover yarn. And that is why this eyelet row is so close to the edge, because, I thought, okay, I'm short. I could take out a row of the ribbing, and then I know I would have enough yarn. But look how that would have pushed this eyelet row even closer to the edge, and I didn't want that. I was actually hoping, that it would be more like down here, which I believe is 3 rows, 4 rows rounds maybe before I did an eyelet. Well, no, here it's right up at the top. So, that's, I want to, if I would have taken out that row of ribbing, I would have taken out, way back down before the eyelets, and then just had more ribbing. That would have been kind of lopsided. I know you maybe don't see that in the end result project, but we knitters know those things are there, don't we? So I just didn't want to mess with it anymore. I wanted to make that cast off work, and it did. And 9 stitches, over the course of 180. Oh, somebody do the percentage for me real quick. 9 times 20. Is it 20%? 10%? 5%? It's something like that. It's a percent. My math mind is not the greatest some days, especially after, we'll blame it on the northern lights. So try that. If you think you're running short of yarn, just throw in a few decreases as you're binding off. It might be all you need to do, especially if you do get to the end and you're just a few stitches short. Go back, bind off like that. It worked for me. Happily. Ikigai, it made me happy. So there you go. Keep this project in mind. It's a good one for gift knitting, charity knitting. Again, using up a one precious skein that you might have. And yeah, it keeps you warm. Very comforting knitting all around. It does. Now, Ikigai, this cowl doesn't make us any money unless we sell it. This cowl, good at, yes, I think most of us, it's a good beginner project. Most beginners can do ribbing. And throw in an eyelet round. Good practice for eyelets, good practice for one version of a decrease. Do we love it? Yes. Does the world need it? Well, if you're making it as a gift or for charity, sure, the world needs it. We need it. Our family needs it. Our community needs it. So, yeah, it's good. It fits the brief very well. So, okay, I have just a few more things to talk about. I do have some tea today. I didn't mention that before. I need it right now. And I'm probably going to say the name wrong. I looked it up, how to pronounce it. No, I got it. This tea is, and look at this mug. That's, which cat is this? This is a Charles Wysocki cat. Frederick the Literate. Frederick, yeah. My friend Peg gave me this mug. It used to belong to her sister. And I treasure it because cats and books, who wouldn't? Yeah, it's good. And I liked Wysocki's art. I have two of his prints and love all those, a lot of them were made into jigsaw puzzles. Really cool. Fun puzzles to do. The tea is hazelberry pur, I think is how they say it. Pur, P-U-R-E-H. And I had to look that up, so I learned that tea, pur, is the leaves are fermented as they dry. And actually, they let those leaves sit for 25 years. Now, they have developed methods to dry them, ferment them in a shorter amount of time for, commercial mass production. But traditionally, that's what happened. They were set aside for that many years. So this also has, so that's the base tea, and then there's hazelnut, and I don't know if they were calling hazelnut the berry or if there's also a berry. I'm not sure I taste a berry flavor in there, but I definitely taste the hazelnut. So I have that tea with a little bit of honey and a little bit of steamed frothy oat milk this morning. Very, very good because it is chilly in here. So that's the tea today. Now, just a couple more in Crafty news items. The first one is, and I'm sure some of you have seen this if you follow them on social media at all, Knitter's Pride has become Knit Pro. And in the past, Knitter's Pride was the American name for this company, and Knit Pro was the European name, and they make knitting needles and crochet items, mostly out of, I wish I had a pair right here with me. They have had lines Carbons, which is a carbon fiber needle with, I think they're stainless steel tips, the silver tips. They have had Dreams, which is a wood needle, and each size is a different stain color of the wood. And those are really nice for knitting outside in the wintertime because they don't get cold. And they have had the Marbles, which was a plastic needle, which had all kinds of different colorations to it, like tortoiseshell types, but different colors. I don't think they make those anymore. They have had Zing, which is an aluminum needle, and so each size, again, was a different shade of aluminum color with a silver tip. They have had just a basic silver, whatever their, I don't remember what their plain silver needles are called, similar to an Addy Turbo style needle. But they have that. They have, I'm missing one. Oh, the laminated wood. So it's all different colors of wood. They've got that. They've had a ginger or a lighter shade where the whole set is the same shade of honey brown color. So they've had all these varieties of needle, and they've done things like every year interchangeable set comes out that's sort of thematic. And, a few years ago they had the Mindful kit, which had, trying to remember what the tips were on that, but, a calm, resting color theme to it. And, some of the mandala icons and that kind of thing on the packaging, like the case and the accessories and such. So, and I'm doing a lot of this. The tea might be kicking in. I think there is caffeine in that one. So they didn't really merge, but they rebranded so that they're all called Knit Pro now. And I wonder, I actually kind of made a mistake recently. I needed a certain size needle in a certain cord length, and I wanted either the Zing or the Dreams. And I was looking for it on Etsy. There's one vendor that I usually buy from, and they didn't have that size. So another vendor, it came up, and without realizing it, I ordered the needle. Look, there it is. Boom, I'll get it. And here it was coming from the UK. And that's fine. It just took a little longer, took a few days longer. The price was in line with what I wanted to pay. But when it came in the Knit Pro packaging from Europe, it was all cardboard. So all recyclable packaging. And a lot of the needles we buy in the US and the Knitter's Pride needles that were sold in the US were in Ziploc plastic bags. And I thought, oh, how cool. I bet you in Europe they've probably said, we don't want your plastic packaging. Please package in something sustainable or something, recyclable. And I thought, that's really good. So it'll be interesting to see if, now that they've changed the name, if that cardboard packaging, paper packaging comes with it to the US products. I hope so, because I know a lot of people will just store their needles in those Ziploc bags that they come in. I don't like to do that. I just have them stored other ways. Not perfectly, that's for sure. It's a system that needs a lot of work, but I toss that plastic. So it's nice not to have a piece of plastic to throw out. And yeah, I really hope that, it stays consistent and we just get recycled paper packaging. So that's one thing. That's a little thing, and it's good, The other thing is, in Crafty news, Missouri Star, which is a quilt company, quilt books, quilt fabric, sewing, etc., has purchased Webs and Lovecrafts. Has purchased Lovecrafts, let me put it that way. Lovecrafts in 2019, I believe it was, purchased Webs. Or maybe it was after that. Maybe it was 22. Sometime in that time frame, they purchased Webs. And Webs, if you don't know, is a big mail order, a warehouse yarn seller. And they have their own yarn lines, but they also have, part of the big business was to buy up closeouts of yarn lines, companies that were going out of business and all that kind of thing. So sort of a liquidator of yarn. And they also sell weaving yarn, which is, probably harder to find than knitting yarn these days. So they did have buy and sell a lot of weaving yarns and mill ends and things like that. So that's their thing. And they were in business for a long time, run by a couple. at one point, and I can't remember, I didn't write down the year of their history, but the children, the daughter and her husband took the company over. And I do know that they actually retired or left. They had business careers. You know, they were not really interested in doing the yarn retail business, but they stepped in when their parents wanted to age out of that business and took it over and ran it for many years. Actually, you know, brought it online more and made it, you know, an internet presence for all of us. It used to just be mail order with a catalog. So in, I didn't write down the year, but yeah, Love Crafts, which is a UK or European-based yarn retailer online. They have a huge online website of their, I don't know if they have their own yarn line, but a lot of European yarns and patterns. They will also, as I understand it, independent designers can sell their patterns through Love Crafts. I think it's a bit complicated, but if you go to Love Crafts, you can set up a free account and a library and, you know, save all of these patterns that they have. Like if they have a free pattern there, you can save that in your library there and always find it. Similar to Ravelry, but not, there's not the social aspect, and you can't, I don't think you can put projects in there and that, but at least pattern storage you can do. If they still host that. It's been a while since I've looked at that for that purpose. So they bought Webs. And I noticed Webs, the website and everything changed just a little bit, changed kind of to the Love Crafts font and a little bit of the styling. I think there were some less than ideal things happening with that, and I don't know if that hurt the sales, possibly. At any rate, Missouri Star bought Love Crafts, hence bought Webs. And I don't know a whole lot about Missouri Star. I think they're just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, because in 2020, they bought Nancy's Notions. And if you don't know that, Nancy Zeman had a long-running series on PBS, Sewing with Nancy, and she was based out of Wisconsin, Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. And it's, I should link to her bio, which I think is still on the Wisconsin PBS website for free for all to see, because it's very interesting how she started out. A good, you know, do it yourself, make your career, get paid for what you love. All of this. Nancy Zeman, Ikigai. She loved what she did. She was smart at it. She got paid for it. The world needed that, because she created a mail order business for all of the sewing supplies that sewers need. So yeah, they bought Nancy's Notions, and Nancy has, you know, she had sold the business, passed away. George is awake. He says it's time to eat, Anne. So yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. And yeah, Missouri Star, I was trying to find, I thought I had also seen, like within the last year or so, that they bought a huge, he's bumping the tripod, a huge, either a fabric company or another like retail sewing chain. I'm not sure. But anyway, that could be really good for yarn sales, yarn availability, or it could be not so good. We'll just have to wait and see. It did say that they had been starting their own yarn line, I think, and I don't know. They're based in Missouri. They have a retail operation down there, which I understand is kind of a mecca for quilters to go to. And they also do, you know, big retreats, and they sponsor the shows, all the quilt shows and that. And quilting, quilting has a huge following. And, you know, there are, I can't even imagine. I don't know if it's bigger than knitting in the US. Hard to say, but it's huge. It's huge. So yeah, it could be, you know, if they're doing it right for quilters and they start doing it right for knitters, yay, that's good. Now, I've blathered on longer than I expected. I'm sorry about that, but I'm done. So enjoy your making. Think about the Ikigai philosophy. How does it apply to you? How does it apply to your creative world? George says, hi. He says, feed me, Anne. We're going to have a roast beef sandwich for lunch, and he loves roast beef. So he's ready. Have fun. Be well. Enjoy your knitting. Enjoy your weekend. See you next time. Bye-bye.